The Vikings are known for their fearless warriors, epic sea journeys, and fierce battles. But beneath the stories of bravery and conquest lies a dark and disturbing truth, one that history often chooses to ignore. What happened to the women who fell into the hands of these ruthless raiders? The truth is far more terrifying than what most history books tell us. Who were the Vikings? The Vikings were seafaring warriors and traders from Scandinavia, modern-day Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. Between the 8th and 11th centuries, they spread fear across Europe, launching brutal raids on villages, monasteries, and cities. They took gold, silver, and food, but one of their most valuable targets was people, especially women. Why? Because women could be used in many ways. Some became household slaves, some were sold in faraway markets, and some were forced into relationships with their captors. The fate of these women depended on who captured them and what they were worth. Why did Vikings capture women? Women were taken for several reasons. Slavery. The Vikings had a massive slave trade, and women were some of the most valuable slaves. Marriage and reproduction. Vikings needed more women to grow their population, so they often kidnapped them and forced them into marriage. Status and power. Owning women as slaves or concubines was a sign of wealth and dominance. Revenge and punishment. Sometimes, women were taken to punish their enemies. Unlike in Hollywood movies, where Vikings are often portrayed as noble warriors, in reality, they could be extremely brutal. They showed no mercy to their captives, and women suffered the most. The journey of a captured woman. Imagine being a woman living in a peaceful village in England, Ireland, or France. One day, out of nowhere, massive wooden ships appear on the shore. Warriors with axes and swords storm in, setting houses on fire, killing men, and grabbing women and children. Within moments, everything changes. Captured women were often bound and forced onto Viking ships. The journey back to Scandinavia was long and brutal. Some women died on the way due to hunger, exhaustion, or abuse. Those who survived faced an uncertain future. What happened to these women? 1. Forced into slavery, thralls. The Vikings had a system of slavery, and women were at the bottom of it. These women, called thralls, had no rights. They were forced to work in fields, cook, clean, and even serve in bed. They could be bought, sold, or given away like objects. Even high-status Viking men owned female slaves. Some women were used as gifts to create alliances between powerful Viking leaders. 2. Taken as concubines and forced wives. Some women were not just slaves. They were taken as concubines or forced into marriage. A Viking warrior who captured a woman might decide to keep her as his wife. But this was far from a romantic relationship. It was a life of control and fear. Viking sagas even mention women who were kidnapped and forced to bear children for their captors. This was how Vikings expanded their population and secured their bloodlines. 3. Sold in slave markets. Viking traders sold thousands of women in markets across Europe and the Middle East. Some were sent to cities like Dublin, where the Vikings had large slave markets. Others were taken as far as the Middle East, where they were sold to wealthy Arab merchants. This trade was extremely profitable. Some historians believe that many Viking raids were carried out mainly to capture slaves. Women were often the most valuable captives because they could be sold for high prices, for brutal rituals and sacrifices. In some cases, Viking rituals involved human sacrifice. Some captured women were forced to take part in horrifying ceremonies. In one Viking burial, archaeologists found evidence that a woman had been sacrificed and buried alongside a powerful Viking leader. This wasn't an isolated event. Several Viking graves have revealed shocking evidence of ritual killings. Some historians believe that certain Viking warriors believed they needed to be buried with women to have a better afterlife. Did any women escape? Yes, some women managed to escape their captors. There are stories of women who fought back, ran away, or even convinced their captors to let them go. Some women even rose to power within Viking society. One famous example is Melkorka, an Irish princess who was captured by Vikings. She pretended to be mute so that no one would know her royal background. Eventually, she was freed and became a powerful woman in Iceland. Another example is Freydis Eric's daughter, the daughter of Eric the Red. She was not a captured woman, but she proved that women in Viking society could be as fierce as men. When her group was attacked in North America, she grabbed a sword and fought back, scaring off the attackers. The Viking Age was not just about war and treasure. It was also about power, control, and cruelty. Today, we uncover the shocking and unspeakable things that Viking warriors did to the women they captured. Some were taken as slaves, some were forced into marriage, and others suffered fates even worse. But there's more to this story than just violence. Some women found ways to resist and even gain power in the Viking world. Stay with me until the end as we dive deep into historical records, Viking sagas, and archaeological findings to reveal the hidden truth. Trust me, you won't want to miss this. The Vikings are often remembered as fearless explorers, brilliant shipbuilders, and legendary warriors who left their mark on history. But their legacy is not just one of adventure and conquest. It is also a legacy of brutality, suffering, and unspeakable acts committed against those they captured, especially women. The stories of these women have largely been forgotten, overshadowed by tales of Viking bravery and heroism. Yet their pain, their struggles, and their resilience deserve to be remembered just as much as the warriors who took them. For centuries, history has painted a one-sided image of the Viking Age, an image that often glorifies their raids, their expeditions, and their culture. But beneath the surface of these stories lies a darker truth, one that is rarely discussed in mainstream history. Viking warriors did not just seek gold and land. They sought people. Women were among the most valuable spoils of war, and their fates were often worse than death. They were dragged from their homes, thrown onto Viking ships, and taken to foreign lands where they were stripped of their freedom, their identity, and sometimes even their names. These women suffered unimaginable horrors. Some were forced into slavery, serving Viking households as thralls, mere property in the eyes of their captors. Others were taken as concubines or forced wives, used to bear children and strengthen Viking bloodlines. Many were sold like cattle in bustling slave markets across Europe and beyond, never to see their families again. And for some, the nightmare did not end with servitude. There is evidence that Viking rituals sometimes involved the sacrifice to capture women. Their lives cruelly ended to honor the dead or appease the gods. But even in the darkest moments, there were stories of resilience. Some women fought back, risking their lives for a chance of freedom. Others played the long game, using intelligence and strategy to gain influence within Viking society. Women like Melkorka, who concealed her royal identity until she could rise to power, and countless unnamed captives who resisted in whatever small ways they could, remind us that even in times of extreme oppression, the human spirit refuses to be broken. These stories challenge the way we view history. The Viking Age was not just a time of warriors and kings. It was also a time of immense human suffering, particularly for those who had no voice. And it wasn't just Viking men who held power. Viking women themselves sometimes owned slaves, and some even participated in the capture and trade of other women. This complex and often unsettling truth forces us to rethink the traditional narratives of history. So, why does this matter today? Because history is more than just the stories of conquerors. It is also the stories of the conquered. It is easy to celebrate the achievements of the Vikings, to admire their courage and their skills, but we must also acknowledge the suffering they inflicted. The women who endured captivity, abuse, and dehumanization are just as much a part of history as the warriors who took them. By uncovering these hidden stories, we give a voice to those who were silenced for centuries. We remind ourselves that history is not just about glory. It is also about pain, loss, and survival. And we learn valuable lessons about power, cruelty, and resilience that still apply to our world today. If you found this video eye-opening, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more untold stories from history. Let me know in the comments what you think. Should history focus more on the stories of the victims rather than the conquerors? And what other hidden truths do you think we should explore? Thank you for watching, and remember, history is never just one story. It's all the stories, even the ones we'd rather forget. See you in the next video.